Hello, and welcome to today's webinar presented by O3 Solutions, Nick Maloof, AWP software implementation, as easy as 1203.
I didn't get that.
Today's agenda, first up, we'll hit a safety moment, and then I'll give you a brief overview of who O3 is. I'll introduce Nick, and then he is going to walk you through implementing AWP software, why successful implementation matters, creating a standardized process, AWP software interfaces, and then O3's best-in-class approach to all of the above. And then we'll give you some key takeaways, and then we'll have a chance for you to ask us anything you'd like. And then with that in mind, you can submit your questions throughout today's presentation via the question panel on your GoToWebinar controls there. And then I'll give you some resources and information for follow-up and to learn more. So first up today, safety moment. This may seem common sense or no-brainer, but via the incidentprevention.org, just some things to keep in mind in terms of communication. Always begin with a positive outlook, create an environment to be heard, set the stage for the conversation, be tactful and concise, avoid abrupt, offensive, or accusatory statements. Be sure to listen and agree where you can, and encourage standards and advocate for success. So just creating a healthy and good environment for communication and feedback. And I think listening is a very key element to all of that. And then just a quick little nugget from the incident prevention website. By communicating procedures clearly and effectively with employees, accident rates will be minimized and subsequently an injury or illness befalling a worker, site visitor, and members of the public who happen to be nearby. So it may seem obvious, but these can help you avoid injury and save lives. So who is O3? We are the market-leading agile software built specifically to support AWP. We're the only solution on the market with true work package management. No matter the size of the project, from small cap to mega projects, O3 is scalable and can support your AWP maturity journey. And we are the leader in AWP software, offering change management, collaboration, automation, scalability, optimization, and under each of those, you can see some numbers and facts. We'll click to the next slide, and I'll show you these numbers in a quick diagram here. So we are on over 500 projects, and then inside of that, there's over 10 owners, over 50 contractors, more than 10 EPC firms, and they are managing over 20,000 users, supporting 10 work package types, 10 solution areas, and that's all on one comprehensive platform. And that software has a 92% client satisfaction. We've seen 18% productivity improvement, and it's got a 58 NPS score. And then just elaborating a little further, what sets O3 apart? We are a single modern platform. It's cloud-based. It's very easy to configure. It's a modern SaaS software, meaning it's very user-friendly. It supports work packaging of all types, from creation to automated workflows and true constraint management. It's scalable across all project types, including robust roles and permissions, multi-project support, and then multi-contractor support as well. And then through continuous innovation, we are constantly looking for feedback. We take client feedback very seriously, and we put that back into the software, and we release every 2 weeks those new features and functionality, and it's all web-based. Okay, so enough about O3. Here's our speaker today, Nick Maloof, the O3 product education lead. He's been here for over 3 years, providing instructor-led training for new users and creating self-paced training and other educational content. And he leads our support team. So thank you for joining us today, Nick. With that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tori, and a little bit of a preliminary apologies. My cat has decided she wants to talk to me a lot now that the webinar has begun. Now, Before we get into implementing AWP software, we need to understand why success matters. And I understand that statement sounds a bit silly. Why wouldn't we want to be successful? But in order to implement AWP and AWP software successfully, it's important to understand those areas that we want to improve in. Where is our process? Where is our tools that currently fail us? And where can we stand to improve? Selecting the right AWP software is a critical step in your implementation journey. But it's only the first step. The effort doesn't end there. In fact, it really just begins in earnest. Until you've successfully implemented the software, you aren't really in a position to enjoy the benefits and roll it out to all of your different projects. Fortunately, O3 is uniquely placed to make that happen. Our process is smooth and painless. With our Smart Start, we'll walk you through every step of the journey in order to fully support your AWP program. An AWP, or Advanced Work Packaging, is a process that sits in the middle of almost everything you do on a capital project, and it touches almost every single department or team that's going to be working on it. It cannot be effective in isolation. The same principle, of course, applies to your AWP software. You don't want it to be, in this fairly siloed environment where you don't have your applications speaking to each other. In order for it to really flourish, they need to be able to talk to each other. And so, to that effect, your AWP software is essentially going to be the central hub for your project delivery process. Now, before we get too deep into talking about AWP software, we do want to start with creating a standardized process. What we're currently looking at here, as you can see on our screen, is about a 1,000-foot view of what an AWP implementation looks like. These are all the steps you're going to want to address in getting started with advanced work packaging. We'll be discussing each of these individually today. But what's important to realize is that AWP is a process. Some of these steps might require a bit more time and effort than others, but each is equally important in constructing an effective AWP program and then successfully rolling it out to the team. From beginning to end, we're probably looking at about 6 to 12 months in order to achieve all of these things. Maybe you're surprised to hear about that figure. Maybe you're not if you're a bit more familiar with what AWP is and the effort that it entails. This rough timeline lets you know the kind of investment that you're expecting. If someone tries to tell you that, hey, you can do this in a matter of days or weeks, you might as well treat that as snake oil and walk the other way, because clearly they have not done it before. Sure, you can say you're doing advanced work packaging after a few days, but a successful implementation of it takes months, and it's well worth the effort. And this isn't something you want to have to do again. You want to get your implementation AWP right on the first try, so that you don't have to do all of that rework. And the first step to getting this right is making sure that you have all the right people in the room. Now, I'm sure you've heard the expression people, process, technology, and the ordering of those words is very deliberate. Because, of course, people are going to come first, as they always should when you are rolling out a new process or a new tool. You want to make sure you have the right people on board from the very beginning, as this change is going to affect everyone. And likewise, you want to make sure you have their feedback incorporated into this new process from the beginning. You don't want to get to the end and find out, hey, there isn't something we accounted for. We're going to have to go back and rework this. So, who all is going to be involved in this process? Well, the first person we're going to want to identify is going to be our AWP sponsor. They're going to be the ones endorsing our AWP program. They're going to be key in securing that executive and management level buy-in. You'll think of them kind of as your primary support. They'll be checking in each step of the way, looking for project updates so they can then deliver those to the higher ups in your organization. But they're not going to be the ones driving it, and that is going to be your AWP champion. Your AWP champion is going to be the one spearheading this effort, your implementation of AWP. This could be someone with prior experience that you hire externally, or someone internal that acquires the knowledge needed to lead this effort. And while we're going to cover this later, I do want to go ahead and emphasize the importance of training now. Many organizations don't account for this on account of AWP champion being a relatively new role still. But AWP is not something you just want to toss onto your project manager's plate. It needs to be a dedicated role within your company or on larger projects, and therefore you want to make sure they get the training that they actually need. What's important here is that they have the authority to provide guidance based on AWP best practices. They're going to serve as the guiding light for your team as they wade into unfamiliar territory. Of course, you are going to want to get everyone involved at some point, but for now, we're just talking about those initial stakeholders that you want to identify. All right, so we have the right people in the room. Now it's time for us to start building that business case. And this is going to be your justification for why AWP is the future for your organization. This is important, especially for the AWP sponsor we just talked about, as it's what they're going to use to secure and then maintain that high level buy-in. Simply put, AWP is going to cost money, and there's no way around that. But again, we talked earlier about how it's an investment. This is all being done with the idea that AWP will save you those dollars down the stretch. And understandably so, you are going to want numbers to back this up. So in 2 different studies that have been done, return on investment, or ROI, was calculated using both CII's and O3's ROI calculators. Even with a low level of AWP maturity, the savings clearly outweighed the costs, totaling between $4.8 and $6.3 million, assuming you had AWP software that you were using in tandem with your AWP plan. So we have our business case. Where do we begin implementing AWP? We need to choose our pilot project. And as you'll learn, or you might already know, we endorse the crawl, walk, run approach. Choosing a multi-billion-dollar mega project with heaps of scope is likely going to make implementing AWP more challenging. Starting off with a smaller project that has single scope is going to make this a lot more simple. You want this to be a learning opportunity so that when AWP is applied on those larger projects, you have plenty of experiences to help drive that experience. That being said, you do want the project to be large enough so that AWP makes a difference. Generally speaking, we recommend pilot projects to be around $100 million TIC. Bonus points if you have a similar project that won't be using AWP. This allows you to compare both of those projects and then quantify the benefits of that newly rolled out AWP program. And of course, we do have much more to say on this topic as we've done so in a previous webinar. We're going to be plugging a couple webinars we've done previously today, and Tori is going to be sharing the information to those after our webinar today. All right, we've chosen our pilot project. Now we need to develop the process that's going to support it. A lot of people start with a blank piece of paper when they are preparing an AWP procedure, and they'll typically struggle to get started with their implementation, or they'll spend months, sometimes years, working with an external contract to develop an internal procedure. Hopefully, this will provide you with more of a starting point and a solid foundation aligned on what the best practice is. This procedure is intended to be a step-by-step guide for the execution of AWP on your capital project. It's arranged in sequential order, showing you the AWP deliverables at each project stage. And for each project, you can start at the top, work your way down through each step, and then each section is going to represent that deliverable. And for each deliverable, you'll have the description of what it is you hope to accomplish and the process that's going to be guiding it from beginning to end. This will help your team understand what needs to be created, what purpose it will serve, and then how to create it. O3 has created a procedure document for you to download as a starting point. It's unlikely to be the final product, but again, a great starting point. You can use that to modify it to your team's needs and then include it in any existing tools or processes that you use for project execution. All right, we've got our procedure, and now we need to roll it out to our team. Once you've created it, we got to train everyone else up on it. So I mentioned earlier not to underestimate the importance of training, and I'll go ahead and restate it here as well. It doesn't matter how effective a tool or process is. If your team doesn't understand how it works, then all that previous effort we've discussed is going to have been in vain. When it comes to training, standard best practice holds that your first step is to identify those that simply need an awareness of AWP versus those that are actually going to be executing it. So For the sake of this topic, we're going to say we have awareness, we have practitioners, two different groups. You'll want to separate these training sessions for each group so that each type of personnel is getting the training they need. The fact of the matter is not everyone has to be an expert at AWP, just those that are going to be driving that process. For some people, it's enough to simply know when their role has to interface with it. Examples of those that just need awareness are going to include your project managers and directors, engineering managers, more of your high level folks like that. Again, not everyone needs to be an expert. They just need to know enough for when their role comes into play with it. On the other hand, your practitioners will likely include your work-based planners, construction managers, superintendents, AWP managers, discipline leads. These are the folks that are going to be driving your AWP process. So they'll need a bit of a more in-depth understanding on how that works. All right, we have our project, we developed the process that drives it. Now we want to see how successful it is, going back to that initial point we made. And to that effect, you're going to want to consider the KPIs that you're going to track. To do so, we need to remember what our goals are in implementing AWP. Where were we falling short previously? Where do we want to see those improvements? How are we going to realize them? It's our goals, after all, that are going to be driving the KPIs that we measure on our project. Do you want to make sure your material arrives on time? Do you want to reduce the time it takes to execute out in the field? Are you being mindful of safety while considering all of these other things as well? Most of these KPIs, as you might have guessed, will be dependent upon the stage your project is in. If you're in the design phase, you're likely more concerned with how efficiently your engineers are producing drawings. Whereas in construction, you may want to see the average time it takes to complete an installation work package, or IWP. We have a lot more to say on this topic as well, as I've mentioned earlier. Again, we'll be sharing any information to any of these webinars after today's session. Whatever your KPIs are, you want to make sure that they are standard across all your projects and across your different portfolios. Sure, some projects might be unique. Each project is bound to have its own nuances, but the goal here is to be able to standardize your reporting so that you can use your past measurements to forecast future ones. Doing this allows you to lean forward a bit more and anticipate, rather than just standing there and seeing what we could have done better after the fact. And last, but certainly not least, we have our software to bring this all together. Modern construction projects are typically very intricate, with a vast array of moving parts and supporting data. Using technology can provide a solid foundation for your AWP implementation and help you to manage this ever increasingly complex data structure. The old wisdom within AWP circles is that you used to need to have your process fully defined before you could even start to think about technology, but the latest AWP software platforms can be implemented concurrently while developing that process by leveraging the best practice model, which we will talk about a bit more. By leveraging this, you can find the right AWP technology for your organization, which can be a bit difficult, but as there are a number of providers out there. So in this deliverable, we'll talk a bit more about what areas you need to consider. One of the first things we'll want to consider is just how well our AWP software can interface with all of the other solutions that we're going to have in our tech landscape. So to do this, it needs to be able to interact with all the other technology that's going to be used throughout your project's lifecycle. For example, your AWP software is likely going to need to interface directly with your products, such as your document management system, materials management systems, schedules, and your engineering 3D model systems. These interfaces are critical for ensuring that you are maximizing the project data and avoiding any duplicate entry or redundant work. You have paid for the model and all the attribution that's loaded into it, so you want to make sure that you use it the most for construction as well as engineering to get the most out of it. And one thing we like to admit is that O3 does not replace all of your other tools. We don't come into your project and tell you that, hey, you need to change everything about your existing processes in order to make us work. Nor do we try to advertise that our product can give you all the functionality of all of the other software that you always use. In fact, if someone tells you that your AWP software is so good, it needs to be able to do all this stuff like standard scheduling, document management, material management, I strongly suggest you just go ahead, save yourself the time, show them the door. O3 maintains a best-in-class approach to ensuring that we provide you with the best possible AWP software functionality while minimizing your change management concerns by tying into your existing data and your existing systems. Now, let's talk about how O3's best-in-class approach can support your newly developed AWP plan and interface with the rest of your tech landscape. We understand that the effort involved in developing and implementing new software, it can be a pretty intensive effort. And through trial and error, we have developed a process that we're confident will minimize the disruption your team experiences through setup. It's all about a manageable process. We'll decide what we're working on for the next couple of weeks, complete that set of scope, and then move on to the next chunk of work. This allows us to make sure that each deliverable gets completed and making sure that we're giving it the sufficient attention it needs before we move on to the next one. And to set the tone with our first sprint, as we like to call them, or 2-week iterations of work, we help understand where you are in your project, and then we utilize this in order to prioritize all the upcoming work that we have in getting O3 set up. And throughout your Smart Start, you'll engage in various workshops that help transition your data and process from what you were using before into O3. This allows us to understand what you did and didn't like about your previous solution and what project challenges may occur so we can account for these as we tailor O3 to your team's processes. And next, we'll talk about process alignment and configuration. It's vital to our setup that we understand how O3 is going to support your underlying processes. Work to identify technical requirements early on, so that way we can ensure they're satisfied with each configuration we make. We'll each sprint or work to configure O3, or all the different parts that your team is going to use at least, and set up the underlying workflows for all your different work packages. Then determine the types of access that each of your stakeholders are going to need, so that we ensure certain people are only seeing what they need to see, whether it's going to be members of your team, contractors, etc. All these requirements, actions, and decisions will be tracked with team boards, which is O3's action management solution. Ensure that everybody stays aligned on the project team, and that all these actions are accessible to all the different people that are going to be involved in the implementation process. My apologies. As we discuss the requirements of O3 and set it up accordingly, we'll also want to understand what other applications O3 is going to be interfacing with, like we talked about earlier. This is something we do discuss fairly early on in the implementation, so we can go ahead and begin that work in the background while we're also configuring all the parts of O3 you're going to use. It begins with testing and making sure the data coming in and going out looks good. Once we've ensured the data is clean, we'll work with your technical teams to get these automated integrations set up. And then we'll document it. One of the deliverables we will be providing you is going to be a well-defined data management plan. It's going to be created by your project manager as well as your O3 SME, two of the people that are going to be guiding you in the implementation process. And this allows your project stakeholders to understand that, where O3 sits in the tech landscape and then where the data is going to be flowing from. But hey, maybe you don't need our developers. O3 does have a RESTful API and easy to use documentation that shows you all our different endpoints and their parameters. So if you have your own team that's dedicated to those automated integrations, we have the resources, we can provide them to get it done. But you also have ours if you need that assistance as well. And then there's training. So my background is training, which is why I've talked about it so much today, so you'll have to excuse me. O3 offers a blended approach to training. To get your learning started as quickly as possible, we have our self-paced training dashboards, which provide you with a more basic overview of the core parts of O3. These are meant to prepare you for the instructor-led sessions that are going to be a bit more targeted later on, where we'll discuss certain topics like work packaging, constraint management, graphical work packaging, and so on. And as we're doing this, we're going to be identifying a couple of stakeholders in your project, namely your super users or your lead workplace planners typically, as well as project admins, people that are going to be making those configurations as the project evolves. We do this so that way we can work alongside them, give them that hands-on experience instead of just setting everything up and then handing it to them. We find that if they are able to work alongside us and actually, get their hands dirty, so to speak, it helps with retention in the long run, which is ultimately our goal, as we are going to discuss. With our on-course package, we can port your course catalog over into O3, and then you can use that to make sure that everybody is completing their required training, get those required certifications, and so on. And training often concludes what we call a go live. So when you go live in a part of O3, it means it's ready for your team to begin using. You'll experience multiple of these go lives throughout the course of your implementation. Separating these out into multiple milestones makes setup and testing more manageable rather than if we just tried to do it all at once. We'll make sure these milestones line up with where you are in your project and when they need to be completed. After each go live, we'll make sure you have the reporting you need to measure progress and bring visibility to those goals and KPIs we discussed earlier that you've identified for your project. Our dashboard reporting is incredibly robust with tons of options for reporting at your disposal. And all of this is in the hopes that we can make you self-sufficient. We love our clients, that is for sure, and we're not going anywhere at the end of an implementation. You'll always have us to support you. But the end goal is going to be setting the stage so that you are self-sufficient in the long run. We set a target date for this phase at the beginning of the implementation and then track that progress along the way. We'll make sure that we deliver all scoped services that we discussed at the beginning, all configurations that needed to take place, the necessary training to roll this out to your team, and then any data needs prior to scheduling and implementation closeout, which essentially punctuates the implementation process. Once the client enters this phase, they're invited to participate in more continued learning via O3 certifications. All right, and that is going to conclude today's webinar, but before I go, let's summarize everything we have discussed. The first point is going to be knowing what success looks like. Again, it's really simple, but that does not mean it is not as equally important. You've identified the pitfalls of your current processes and tools and are looking to improve them. So understanding what right looks like is the very first step in embarking upon your AWP implementation journey and AWP software. To that effect, software is key. It'll support your well-defined processes and serve as a hub for your project's data. To do that, it needs to be able to interface seamlessly with all the different aspects of your tech landscape. And that is just one part of O3's simple but effective implementation process. From beginning to end, we will support you. Make sure that your team is ready to go using our battle-tested tool. From configurations to data testing to training and go live, we'll make sure you're set up for long-term success. And with that, Tori, I will go ahead and kick it back to you for any questions we have.
All right, thank you, Nick. That was a great presentation. So yeah, a reminder, you can continue to submit your questions on the control panel over there, and we'll just jump right in. Okay, Nick, first question. Could you explain how O3 handles scope changes in a project and how it assists in scope management?
Yes, so we talked about team boards earlier, and this is a very effective tool at managing that scope management, as well as any scope changes you might have. So again, it's a central location for storing all of these different actions to make sure that everybody can access them and see them. So it provides great visibility. Tasks can be used in O3 to notify multiple different users if changes are made. And then you can also use risks as well in order to capture any risks associated with the scope change, scope management, and mitigate them properly.
All right, next question. Considering the variety of data types and sources O3 handles, how does it ensure data quality and minimize errors during the import process?
That is a good question. So O3 does have a purpose-driven data import process. So we'll classify the data during that import. We'll apply rules-based pre-processing to minimize the manual intervention, and then we'll conduct rigorous data quality checks. So This commitment to data quality ensures that the information entering the project is reliable and it's aligned with your project standards, which will work with you to understand while also minimizing the errors that happen during that import process.
Okay. How does O3 differentiate itself in terms of digital twin management, especially when dealing with different project stages?
That's a good question. So O3 does stand out in regards to other digital twins at each stage of the projects. We don't just focus on a singular final model. Instead, we'll dynamically represent every phase of the project. So, this approach ensures that the digital twin accurately reflects each stage, contributing to a more comprehensive and holistic view of, your project's management.
Okay, and let's do one last question. How does O3 address security concerns, especially when dealing with sensitive project data?
That's a good question as well. Yeah, so this has been a huge priority for us. So O3 does comply with SOC 2 standards. We are SOC 2 certified, ensuring users that their data is handled securely. Our commitment to and adherence to SOC 2 compliance reflects, our dedication to maintaining the highest standards of data security, which we understand is equally as important for our clients.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, Nick. That was some really great information, some good questions too. Um, so I'd like to leave y'all with some follow-up. You can learn more by visiting our website at www.o3.solutions. And there you will find case studies, past webinars, a video library where you can learn more about our solutions, and then as well as just industry topics. We answer a lot. We have a ton of educational material there. We believe that everybody should have access to the information in order to adopt AWP. And then just stay up to date with what O3's got going on. Connect with us on social media. Follow us on LinkedIn. We've got a pretty big voice and audience there. And then you can sign up for our monthly newsletter. That way you never miss another event or something going on that we are doing. And if you'd like to learn more, you can also email us at info@o3.solutions. And then last tidbit, I'd like to invite you. Apologies, my watch. I'd like to invite you to request an invitation to the AWP Exchange. We will be in Houston on Tuesday, May 14th. This is an invitation-only event where we will have a select group of owners, EPCs, and partners just discussing ways that they have successfully overcome industry challenges with AWP, and then the solutions they used, and then the results they gained from that. It's a one-day event. It's highly effective and true value. It's free to all those that attend, but again, it is invitation only. You are welcome to request an invitation just by emailing or visiting our website. We hope to see you next time. Stay tuned for our next webinar. It should be on March 21st coming up. So just stay tuned to your inbox and social media. Thank you again to Nick for presenting and everybody that joined us today.
Thank you, Tori, and thank you everyone in attendance.